Hey everyone, welcome back to Free the Money. I have a really exciting conversation today. We're going to be diving into digital freedom, privacy, and what a user first internet looks like. Today, I'm going to be talking with Luke Mulks, who is the VP of Business Operations at Brave, as well as a leading voice behind the Basic Attention Token. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, for those who are not familiar with you, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with Brave?
Yeah, sure. So I worked in startups for a long time after doing like media production and a lot of web work and then got into ad tech actually and I spent a lot of time in ad tech right when kind of Google and Facebook and all these companies were kind of hoovering up all the privacy and taking over the market. And then I wanted to go back to doing startups, but I couldn't find anybody really doing anything in the right direction, and I wasn't really feeling good about what was happening with privacy because it was right after, like, I don't know if folks remember, but like Edward Snowden did all these like revelations, right? And right after that, you saw things kind of shift from, okay, the government's going to just be plugging into these things to like, we're just going to have companies collect everybody's data. And that's kind of the work I was involved with, was kind of building these business intelligence kind of silos for all of these different companies. And then the government just goes to them. So I was starting to see that happening, and you were starting to see kind of how this data was being used for other purposes and in nefarious ways with all sorts of things. And I kind of was where the sausage was being made too. Like, I was working with Google and with these companies and their biggest customers. And then I was also working with the big media companies, and with Google. And it was kind of like this really, it was a really interesting time, but also you just realize that nobody really knows outside of where things are happening, like what the scale is of the data collection and how this stuff's being used. And so then I saw what Brave was doing. I saw our CISO, Yan Zhu. She was at the Tor project, and she did a bunch of other things. And she said that she was working at Brave. And then I saw what Brave was doing, and I was like, look, okay, these are a group of people that actually, they want business and they want, the web to work together with privacy instead of against the user's privacy. And I hadn't seen anything like that wasn't just trying to kind of scorch the earth. And so it seemed really interesting to me. And, given my background of like, working on the ad tech and monetization side and deep in the tech side of it, I said, okay, cool. Like, I can actually have an impact here. I want to do this again. And yeah, so I kind of joined up. This was like in 2016. So like, this is back when people were questioning whether people even cared about privacy or not. So
Hmm.
it was a tough challenge, but still here, and we're
Wow.
growing all the way up.
Wow, wow, that's amazing. So you saw firsthand what was going on, and then you were able to remove yourself from that situation and find a project that, you know, was actually innovative in putting the user first. So you talk a lot about a user first internet. Can you
Mhm.
talk about how Brave is really that this is kind of their philosophy, the user first? And I know you also you talk a lot about BAT,
Mhm.
the basic attention token. So I guess that goes hand in hand how you were talking about monetization and what your background was in.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm really glad you asked about this, because kind of user first is kind of like, you can have privacy, but really, when you're thinking about the user, nobody really puts their interests at first with when they're building things, right? So like,
Hmm.
you think about all the trade-offs that have been forced on users, to where people are now saying, well, the trade-off for a quote unquote free web is your privacy, which is just
Hmm.
not a great trade-off. And I don't remember anybody asking users if they were comfortable trading that off. Nobody did, right? Like, and it's kind of the world we woke up into over 10 or 20 years or whatever. And so, Brave is different, and you kind of needed somebody like us to come into the picture that was new, because the business model that scaled was very user hostile. Like, your information was getting passed to whoever, like,
Hmm.
however, and however often, and collected for however long, and nobody really knew. And even in this space, I couldn't tell you where your data would end up, because there's just so many different ways that this stuff is passed around. So what Brave does is says, okay, look, like, if we have a second chance, and it might be our last chance to kind of do this right and fix the web, we're going to do it from first principles. And so we're going to put the user's interests before everybody else's. So we're not going to sacrifice on security or privacy or things like dark patterns where you're kind of baiting and switching users into like giving more information away and then using that. We're just going to do it the right way. We're going to start. If there's some users can give their data to people if they want, but that's going to be a choice that the user is going to make. And it's also kind of like, okay, Brave as an organization doesn't want to collect any information about our users because it's software. Like mistakes are going to happen with bugs and things, and governments are governments. And if you make a policy of like aiming to collect as little to no information as possible, then there's no user information for an authority to take or for a hacker to exploit. And it's kind of this whole different approach where you're going from this, data is oil kind of concept to one where do we even need that? And arguably you don't really need that, right? Like a marketer doesn't need to know what Bree is buying. A marketer needs to know that Bree is this type of a user or fits into this type of a cohort that's likely to buy these things, right? Like, and there are ways with privacy technology and with security that we can do these things and make business work. And that's kind of been our whole thesis around user first, is that you don't have to trade off. There shouldn't be a trade off between privacy and convenience. There shouldn't be a trade off between, business and privacy either, right? Like, let's do it all together in a way that like should have been how things originally were done, because a lot of this kind of sings back to when the web was first created. People were first party experiences were cool. And it was like, then everything just kind of proliferated, right? Like, so we're a lot of us at Brave are people like myself who came here trying to like, seeing that the window's closing on us trying to make changes before, especially this was before AI kind of kicked in. Now it's even tighter, right? Like, and I mean, I look at where we're at now. I mean, we're at 104 million monthly active users. That's a stronger statement than anything I could tell you, right? Like that means that 104 million monthly people like chose privacy when they could have chosen something else, right? Like, and whether that's directly because they care or because you get really good benefits from having better privacy, like I can go watch YouTube without ads in the background. Like that's awesome for people in a time when people don't have a ton of money and premium costs more money and there are tons more ads everywhere, right? Like, so it's kind of like looking at it from that perspective of like, how can we really just, realign the web back to the user? Because all of this wealth has been created around Silicon Valley, around, and the globe off of users. And what have the users gotten out of that? And that's kind of what we're doing with BAT too, where it's like, you have attention that's kind of fueling this whole thing, right? Like, you should get a revenue share with your attention because it's fungible and it's what's the backbone is, and nobody's really done that for you, right? Like, and so with that, that's what we're aiming to do. And we started with advertising, and we're kind of moving into some other areas with our new roadmap that's coming out too.
Yeah, that's so cool. When I discovered that, I was like, this makes so much sense. I can't believe no one has ever done that before. And like what you said, you have over 100 million monthly users. You guys are now extremely competitive. And I mean, if we also look at people are more interested in privacy now. I mean, we see Proton Mail. I even use Proton Mail, and it's something for the regular person. It's not someone who is just really into tech. And we're seeing more interest in privacy coins. So I definitely think that 2026 is going to get much more competitive for privacy. And I like what you were also talking about with AI. Obviously, we're seeing what's going on with ChatGPT and them handing over users' data. We have seen that firsthand now. What do you think this impact is going to have in 2026 for privacy?
I think it's going to be huge, right? Like, I think that, the risks to users are really, we're trying to make them more well known, because now you've got these browsers that have agents in them, right? And that's really the privacy on what you're giving to ChatGPT. It's important, right? Like, but the thing is, now you've got agents that are automatically doing things, right? Like, and it's a whole new dimension on what AI is, but also on what the user experience is. And so it's going to be a huge year next year around, okay, right, you see people like Sam Altman talking about, oh, well, and others in Silicon Valley too, like talking about, okay, well, maybe we can give agents kind of accreditation like a lawyer would pass the bar exam or something like that, so that these things are trusted. But I don't know if lawyers are going to like that,
Yeah.
and doctors, et cetera. Like, and I think that the real answer is to like, okay, AI knows, and the prompts know, okay, I'm going to do deep research, or I'm going to do this or that, right? Like, and even with we have AI in search, and it makes these answers. You can do really good at like switching based on what the input is. And so maybe the answer is more that, hey, these are different environments that you're letting agents do work in that are controlled and aren't just free reign. And the information in them is kind of like going to your doctor's office, or here's this room over here, this profile over here is like what you're going to your lawyer and talking about, where these things don't talk to each other, but you can benefit from the technology in them. I
Mhm.
think we're going to go in that direction more than just like, hey, Wild West, like free reign. Because I can tell you, like, our research team put some articles out there on our blog about like some of these injection attacks that can happen, where like if there's some text in the page that's the same color as the background, the agent reads that even though you don't see it as a human, and can do things based on what's programmed there. Like it's pretty wild stuff. But like these things are gonna start to proliferate, just like how privacy you mentioned, and it was really good point around like more and more people are caring about privacy now. Well, a lot of that's because people are starting to see these things that used to be abstract ideas, like, oh, the government might do this, or these laws might be abused for civil disobedience, where
Mhm.
you actually see this happening now, right? And you see breaches happening, and everyone's kind of been impacted by this now, and it's not
Yeah.
comfortable. And a lot of
Everyone.
people have kids now, like, and it's a very, as a parent, you don't want to have your kids exposed to
Yeah.
things. And just, I think it's part of why we're seeing like a lot of the privacy meta in crypto right now, is because
Mhm.
people are starting to wake up to like, hey, look, like, oh, Europe's making a CBDC, like, and the US is we'll figure it out
Stable
someday,
coins,
you know,
stable coins, backdoor
right?
CBDCs. I mean, the UK is trying to KYC the internet.
It's
So how do
crazy.
how do we combat that? A lot of this relies on developers,
Hmm.
but do you feel like developers within the United States are fearful of this because some of them have been punished for writing open source code? So I don't know what the answer to any of these questions are.
The answer is that there isn't a great answer that's going to tie this all up in a bow, but I think that it really, these things, you can't rely, the perfect answer is not going to get there from a regulator. And if you, here's the problem, right? Like, we've seen, and I'm just going to picking on Europe because it's fun, but also because, it's a good example. Like, like Europe did this really big sweeping privacy regulation called GDPR, and it launched in 2018. And it was like some of the strictest privacy protection in the world, right? And a lot of other
Uh,
governments used it as a way to kind of regulate privacy, because they had really good definitions in there. Okay, here's what personal data means, yada, yada, yada.
mhm,
The problem is that like we even were pretty active with, hey, look, like these are some things that are out there that are kind of violating the law. You even get the regulators to admit that, and then nobody actually enforced it, right? And then on the other end, it's kind of conflicting, because it's almost like they can't wait to regulate things fast enough
mhm,
when things haven't got any market fit yet. But you get these weird contradictions. Like they made Micah, which has some really weird, like kind of privacy hostile policies in it, and now you've got them making like a CBDC, which is like super, like that's super dystopian, right? Like they're gonna
yeah,
know everything you're doing, and so you, in the same place where you have strong privacy protection allegedly, like you've also got these very weird, like Orwellian things happening. So it's kind of like you're not going to get the solution there, right? Like you're not going to get, like, the boomers are not going to figure this out with the laws. You really have to have developers building things and getting things to scale fast. And that's
mhm,
where I think like with Zcash, right? Like where you're seeing that rip, and people are shielding stuff, like that's innovation winning at, a bigger scale, right? Like, or what we're doing, where it's like, look, like we're going to do things from first principles because it's a safety thing for a user. And also, like, once you get to a certain scale with that, like, the cat's out of the bag, like that's kind of how tech has evolves, right? Like, and so that's what I'm banking on more. And yeah, things will get more compliant or whatever. But the other thing people don't understand very well is that, like, compliance isn't like a monolith, and neither are laws, right? Like if we're talking about global networks, which the internet and crypto
Yeah.
are, people want to say, "Oh, well, I don't want the good guys or the bad guys." Well, the good guy and the bad guy, it really depends on where you're standing, right? Like, and if you surrender to these things and compromise on these things, what you're really doing is saying, "Look, like I'm going to be captured by foreign policy of this side or that side," and that's not great. And so, like, I think that it's really important, there are risks, right? But also, like, if we're being candid, like some of these guys were like poking the government in the eye, like pretty blatantly, and also like had some pretty not great. There's ways about doing this that are responsible too,
Okay.
where like, it's don't market it as the black market thing to do, and you're less of a target too, right? You know what I mean? Like it's a everybody's got to be a little more honest with how we're presenting things to the world too. But really, you don't even have to market it that way. Just say this is for, we're building software for everybody. Like I don't need to like Signal is available to everybody. Like so is the Tor network, which the government created. Like you've got like spooks and criminals and all sorts of people in there, and the trade off is that hey, if you want anonymity, everybody wants it, right? Like so,
Yeah.
yeah, I can't not care about this. So anyway, it's a complicated thing, but I
Yeah.
don't think that I think it takes courage to build in these environments and conditions right now. I think it's really unpredictable too because even if you look at like changing of the guard every administration, it's been awesome to see some things change, but other things haven't really changed that much either. So I think it's just when in doubt, just like default to like building kind of with conviction and like building the best privacy thing. And there are ways to do this where it can make it accessible if you're making it open source and kind of being careful with things and etc. But also jurisdictions matter too. So like every company's got to be smart with how they do this, and there isn't a great answer to be honest.
Okay. No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Earlier, you touched on, parents being very concerned about their children's privacy online. I know obviously this is a major concern. What are a few things you could tell parents, if any parents are watching, how they could protect their children online?
Yeah, I think like, I've got two young kids. I have like a 7 and a 9-year-old, and it's kind of it's wild seeing how much exposure kids have to like devices and the internet. Like, and I think like the best defense is kind of a good offense at home with this stuff. So there are some services you can get out there that they help you kind of block or lock down certain IP address ranges and things like that on your device, and do it in easier ways than what I'm kind of explaining. But be on top of your kids with their devices, and then like if you're use every control you can on that. Like I mean, I'm a big privacy guy, right? Like obviously, but when it comes to parenting your kids, I think that's a different set of circumstances. And I think if we look at what's happening with the UK and with Europe and even in the US, right? Like you've got like adult sites are doing KYC, and I think in Texas, Florida, and Missouri. And so the patterns are emerging here. I think if you don't parent your kids, the government will try to, and I
Of
don't think
course.
anybody really wants that. I certainly don't. And so a lot of it, I mean, some things too are pretty gnarly things. Like I was seeing stuff about like Roblox and all these like games
Yeah.
that kids are in where holy crap, like
So
it's
many
just
pedophiles.
yeah, disheartening, like, and I wish that the companies would do a better job of policing that too. And I think part of this is understanding that, look, like, just because something seems like it's for kids, you've really got to do the
Yeah.
diligence as a parent and stay on top of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think any industry that's for children is going to be infiltrated by the bad guys, It's just it
Probably.
makes sense. Look at where kidnappers hang out. And also, I mean, with that being said about the government too, I mean, look at the public school system. Those are the
Right.
people parenting our children. So yeah, that's good I understand how Brave makes money with that, but can you talk about also maybe how users have a VPN and just some premium services that are also offered within Brave?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have like a interesting setup here where like some people, like when we started especially, like it was probably half privacy and security people that were using our product, and then the other half were like crypto people, right? And as we've grown, I mean, I think arguably our user base is probably one of the biggest in crypto, but also like there's a lot more people that aren't too into crypto too. So like we're trying to work on what are ways that we can have crypto work with it feeling normal to a normie, right? Like something your neighbor would want to use, which I think is what
Yeah.
we should be doing anyway as an industry.
Oh,
But
yeah.
also like, yeah, I mean, like we also kind of like have some more traditional plays too. Like we have premium products, like you were mentioning. So we have like Brave Talk, which is like a private Zoom, basically that you can use for free, or there's a premium side for that. We have a VPN that is available as a premium product, and we have like we have an AI assistant in the browser called Brave Leo that has a premium tier that gives you more models and other options. And so these offerings kind of let you have like more premium private products that maybe you're not into crypto, but you do want to have a VPN, or maybe you want to have a better video solution, like
Yeah.
you're a lawyer or something, and like maybe having Zoom scanning all your stuff is not great, or giving more to Google, right? Like, and so those more kind of premium product lines, we're developing more of those as we go too. But it's kind of Brave is kind of more of a stack now than just one product or another, because we have search as well, and like we make
Mhm.
a lot of revenue too off of a search API, because we have our own search index. So there's Google and Bing and Brave. Basically, everybody else kind of syndicates off of that. And so we've made it so that like developers that are building AI or want to have search functionality can hit our index. And that whole index is built with privacy first, right? So it's kind of like a cleaner way to kind of access real time things, that information that you want, just like you would hit a search engine. So those are things. We have a lot of kind of traditional business lines that we upgrade with privacy, which is one set of business items that we do pretty well with. And then we have the crypto side, and we have the advertising side. And, there's, you kind of have to have that, right? And
Yeah.
our goal is to kind of make it so that you can replace everything with Brave if you want, privacy all around, if we're winning at that, so I think that we're
Well,
going to keep doing that forward.
how competitive do you think privacy is gonna become in the next couple of years? We've talked about how obviously people are more aware of this. Brave now has this amount of users. Do you think this is going to actually make, like, a big impact on just big tech in general?
Oh yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm going to answer it in two parts. Like I think
Okay.
first, like from Brave's point of view, right? Like we're in a really unique position, especially like in the crypto space and the privacy space. Our denominator when I'm thinking about growth, right? Like I'm thinking about the 3.5 billion Chrome users that
Mhm.
have yet to try us out, because I think once they do, they feel the difference, right? This is one of those things where you can feel it. It feels like a better web when you're using one that's built this way. And then the other side of it is around the competition in the privacy space, and this is what's really interesting. So like I was saying earlier, when we started at Brave, there were these like, oh, the privacy paradox, and like, do people even care? And if kids are posting on social media or the Gen Z or whatever, like
Mhm.
realistically everybody cares, right? Like we're at this new stage where you're going from proving that people care to like a crowded privacy market where what does
Yeah.
privacy mean there, and you're already seeing it where like different, and the real answer is there's going to be different applications for privacy and different things. So privacy is not a monolith, but it's going to be interesting because in the US, privacy is kind of defined by what the big companies say privacy is, whereas in Europe,
Mhm.
like I was saying earlier, you have clear definitions, right? Like, and everybody, and it still all kind of operates like the Wild West. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to navigate this, because, and it's kind of like the next phase of all of this too. So we're out of the stage of like people caring. We know people care. Now it's like, okay, like how do you compete in this? And I welcome it. I think it's great. Like this is
Of
the best
course. Yeah.
outcome, just to have this there. And I think this is where it's going to come down to like a lot more focus on usability, and also on like in the academic space too, just like is the technology, how private is it? Like, are we going to see things improve on the privacy side as a
Mhm.
result of this? I hope so. I hope what ends up happening is that there are a lot less of the web breaks from privacy, because that was something we dealt with for a long time, where people used to say, okay, like there's a big trade-off. If you want to use privacy tools, it's going to break most of the web for you. And that's something we put a ton of resources into. Like, okay, we actually put like some really, really smart folks from our research team. And then we actually have a really good ad block filter list engineer that just like spends most of their time putting solutions in that break less of the web, but keep the privacy, privacy preservation intact. And so I think as an industry, like, and as a space, having that better applied applied everywhere is going to be great for users. I think, I'm super excited for this. It's going to get kind of weird too, and I kind of like that too. But yeah,
Yeah, what I really love about Brave too, and you touched on this earlier, is how it has to be obviously user friendly, and my grandma has to be able to use it. In order for something to scale,
yeah.
everyone needs to be able to use it, and I really like the direction privacy is going in that sense. But I am also curious, do you see in like the next couple of years, basically all these big companies just maybe attaching freedom and privacy to get more users and kind of confuse people when they really have backdoors? Do you think that's gonna be a problem?
I think it's already starting to happen, to be
Yeah.
honest. And it's alarming, but also it's nothing new either in some ways. Like, Google did this a couple years ago. They did this whole like privacy. They had like a privacy push where they would say things like, privacy is fundamental to us in everything we do, or privacy
Yeah.
paramount, or whatever. And it was like BS. And later on too, this is the interesting thing. Like, when these guys have to go to court and there's discovery, like all this stuff comes out of, oh man, that they were totally like bullshitting everybody, but I think, in some ways they can't really do it right. That's not going to stop them. And I think that you mentioned two words in there, right? Privacy and freedom. And I think that this is the thing that people really should like put their antenna up for, is like, when you hear people starting to talk about freedom with this stuff, go check their privacy policy and see like how much of your
And
information they're collecting and who they're sending it to. Because what I'm seeing happen, what I'm seeing reports of, are like entities that are like voluntarily giving more information than they need to when authorities are asking, and people not being aware and just hoping that, oh, I see freedom, I see privacy, or whatever. Or they'll talk about privacy and then 6 months later change everything to be super user hostile and like collecting all these things, or they'll acquire a company that does it. It's complicated, right? Like, and I think the best thing to do is kind of what you're seeing too, where, and this is why I love crypto too. It's like the privacy community and the crypto community have no qualms with like going straight at the throat of anybody that they don't like,
yeah.
or are doing weird smelling things. And so like that's kind of what it has to be, the anti-venom, right? Like, for all this stuff, is like, if people
Yeah,
have to be really vigilant and come with it, when they see things that they don't like. And that's what I hope happens. I'm worried when I look at kind of the way that a lot of the crypto space, like, there was such a push for ETFs, and I think that's good, and for institutional adoption. But I worry a little bit about like how much are people going to give away in that, and how much of this, like, I
absolutely.
think the line, what's the balancing line between like a lot of the good principles behind crypto, and then sticking with that versus just making a predatory banking system more
Y-
predatory and
y-
better.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the original ethos of crypto, and now people are just kind of putting it on a silver platter and handing it to the government. But yeah, I mean, I
Right.
understand. Like, as somebody who is a crypto investor, obviously, I want certain coins and projects to take off, and I know with these ETFs, that's really going to happen, most likely. I understand where you're
Yeah.
coming from, and
It's
I'm
like a
scared we're
sovereignty thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So with that being said, I feel like we have kind of like two paths we're going to be entering. We're either entering into like this dystopian role with people like you and being able to go into a more free world. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years for sure. But
For
this is kind of
sure.
like the make it or
And I
break it
think
point.
well, and I think the great thing that I kind of cling to, because sometimes it can be difficult working in this space sometimes, because, you just, the sheer scale of all of it, right? Like, but then ultimately, this is why I love the user first stuff, right? Because the person working in a government office is also a user, and this is what's so great about the U.S. Like, and in America, it's kind of like, ethos too, is that like, the individual, right? Like, if we can build for the individual, and
Hmm.
we can go straight to their heart, right? Like, and build something that they care about, and that protects them. I think that that's the best approach, because ultimately that's what all these things are comprised of, is people. And so if we can deliver on that, I think that that's the win. And I think other companies are starting to do this too. It's just, we just have to keep leading by example,
Yeah.
and keep, as long as people care, like, that's the thing that matters the most, I think.
With everything going on with cryptocurrencies right now, do you think when this tech was created and different tokens were created, do you think they didn't have the user first in mind? Now, that's why these big institutions are kind of making it a lot more accessible to the everyday person.
I think that it was not necessarily right. Like I think that I one of the times I've been in crypto since like 2015, and when we launched our token, it was in 2017. It was kind of during that
Okay.
ICO phase, and the awesome part about that was that like you had all these people that were coming from the Web 2 world that were, and it was when tokenization was like first kind of taking off as like, oh, you can tokenize all of these
Mhm.
different predatory business models into virtuous ones, and it was really exciting because it was a forcing function to kind of shake up trees and like say, oh cool, like let's think about incentives and all that good stuff. I think a lot of the benefits of the blockchain is that the transparency that comes with it. A
Of
lot of the
course.
limitations at the time, and a lot of the limitations until more recently have been around scaling that technology, and they've been technical, right? Now I think we're at a point where scaling privacy and the transparency of the blockchain are doable,
Mhm.
and I think that like that's what's exciting about this next year is that like the will has always been there. Like we've been putting this stuff out for a long time. I think that it's been a technical. We've been blocked on the technical side more than we have around like intentions, right? Like,
Okay.
or because I mean, even Zcash has been around for a long time. Monero's been
Yeah.
around for a long time, right? Like people,
Yeah.
people care. I just think it's and even Satoshi, right? Like talked about like privacy with this
Yeah, and
stuff,
that was kind of the one
initially.
the one thing that Bitcoin doesn't have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like these people don't necessarily have bad intentions when they're building things. I think that stuff
No,
just
no.
scales super fast, like and
Yeah.
that's but I think that that's a misconception that people have is that like everybody at Google is thinking like evil and all the and realistically like not really. Like there's some there's always bad apples and things. The problem is that like small moves matter with big tech and things that can scale wildly predatory if they're not thought of right from first principles. And so I think that's where like there's a lot of confusion out there in the market because people don't really unless you're in it, it's hard to see it. Like all this stuff's
Mhm.
happening in the background.
Yeah. Well, I think we're living through some really exciting times and, especially people like you that are working on something that's so innovative. I think it delivers a lot of hope for the future and obviously alternatives for people who really want to take back their privacy online. So I really applaud you for what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I think it's really interesting how BAT has grown so much. I think you guys are at like $400 million market cap now. So, it's showing that it
It's
is
wild.
making moves.
It's wild. Like I think I've seen. I think we're at over 25 million cryptocurrencies in the market when you think about all the tokens that have been out there,
Yeah.
and we're still, I think, 14th most distributed on Ethereum. It's like a lot
Wow.
of our holders have like a lot of long term conviction. It's awesome, and some of the stuff we have coming out, like and maybe I'll share some more as we'll roll some of that out later. But it's one of those things where a lot of interesting things are happening now, and yeah, and it's also a team thing too. Like our team at Braves is a really phenomenal group of people, and our users are just like die hard too. So like the best part about it is like a lot of people that work here were people that just wanted to help and found a way. And yeah, it feel really lucky being able to work for such a cool place. So appreciate the
Oh,
kind words.
well, that's incredible. And do you wanna just tell us a little bit I know you have your own show. Can you just tell us about some of the topics you discussed on your show?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So I started hosting a Brave Technologist podcast. You can go to like brave.com/podcast. We talk. I bring on people from AI. I bring on people from a crypto space. I bring on privacy, security people, and we try to kind of think about like bringing talking about how these situations, like how these technologies actually impact people, because there's so
Mhm.
much like hyperbolic stuff out there. And so yeah, it's a great show. We have a lot of cool people on. We've had people from the SEC. We've had people from
Wow.
leading tech. We just had somebody on from BrainChip. They build like local models with AI that like were implanted into glasses, so they could do like detection for epileptic patients before they're going to have
Huh.
seizures. Like your brain puts off some brainwave that like this model can detect. It's wild stuff. Like, and so that's the kind of stuff that's interesting to me is like, how are these things actually getting used, and then what concerns do the people actually building these things have, and what should people know about? And that's kind of what we dive into.
Amazing. Well, I wanna check out your podcast. That's incredible. Well, any last words that you wanna say to the audience or where people can follow you?
No, I really appreciate you having me here and giving the opportunity for us to talk to users. I mean, and if anybody wants to try our stuff out, it's just brave.com, and they can find me. I'm Luke Mulks at Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it, and my DMs are
Yeah.
open. So if anybody has any issues or whatever, like feel free to reach out.
Yeah. You put out a lot of great tweets, so he's definitely someone to follow. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show and chatting with me, and, like I said, you guys are doing amazing work, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Bree. Appreciate it.